I know Emily Compagno has been standing by with us. Emily, you joined us on the breaking news the last time he held a news conference of this nature. He is not resigning, Emily. And I want to put up on the screen the words of the now 7th accuser that has come forward to New York Magazine. What she told that magazine, she said, Andrew Cuomo's hands had been on my body, my arms, my shoulders, the small of my back, my waist, often enough by late 2014 that I did not want to go to the holiday party he was hosting for the Albany press corps at the executive mansion. I know you've had a chance to now dig through this 7th allegation. Can he hang on any longer with all of this now in his face, Emily?
He's clearly trying, Sandra and John. And one of the things that struck me about his presser just now is that dismissive attitude, the dismissals of these allegations, the fact that he has more important things to work on. He is certainly prioritizing, it is clear, all of his other work. And frankly, it seems as if he is not taking these seriously. Now, in response to that, Deborah Katz, the attorney for one of the first accusers, Charlotte Bennett, has already responded because he continues to do this. And she said that the governor does not deny touching people, but insists he just never did it inappropriately, shows he is committed to gaslighting victims and perpetuating these lies. This is exactly how abusers operate. To touch on another point that he brought up, he said, well, these were photographs. It was in public. The whole point, Sandra and John, is that it does not matter. Harassment can take place certainly in front of the camera. And in fact, this most recent accuser, Jennifer Bakeman, details in her explosive article and allegations that the reason so many people from Albany have been reaching out to her is because they all saw it. In fact, it's because it's recorded all of this inappropriate touching that she did feel ultimately a responsibility, my words, not hers, to come forward and, yes, shed additional light. There's so much more to unpack here as well.
For that last allegation, Governor Cuomo addressed that at the end of the press conference. He said, quote, that last allegation is not true. I have not had a sexual relationship that was inappropriate, period. He also tried to sort of put woke cancel culture on its head and said this. Listen here.
People know the difference between playing politics let the review proceed. I'm not going to resign. I was not elected by the politicians. I was elected by the people. Part of this is that I am not part of the political club.
He said there people know the difference between playing politics, bowing to cancel culture, and the truth. He's playing the victim here of cancel culture.
That he is, and reminder that this is a common theme he's come back to again and again. Now, in response, Jennifer Bakeman, again, in these latest allegations, says that he has employed what she called emotional terrorists. That part of this operation, this machine, she alleges, along with those other accusers, is one of this attempt to silence these voices, to intimidate. And I want to point something out, that workplace harassment is not just about one incident or isolated incidents between the harassers and the victims. It's also about a culture fostered. And within all of these allegations, they talk about just that. Phone calls from his aide saying, are you going to come forward? We just want to check. Phone calls intimating it's not in your best interest. Political backlash. Along the spectrum, we have seen and now heard allegations running the gamut of that political pressure that his entire culture that was fostered that went toward them. And one small example, for example, is Jennifer Bakeman talks about that there was a video played at a holiday party that sort of roasting all of the journalists, and the background song was F You by CeeLo Green. So culture, everyone, doesn't have to do with these isolated incidents. It can certainly represent a realm of hostility, offensive behavior, and the like.
Emily, you are the host of Outnumbered. You are also an obvious, brilliant attorney as well. You're a woman, and you're an observer of politics. And we have been talking about the hypocrisy of this, not hearing yet from our first female vice president, Kamala Harris, not hearing from Elizabeth Warren yet on this issue. Why? Is there a missed opportunity here for Kamala Harris to speak out on this issue? I will just get this in here so it's clear that the White House has been asked about it. Jen Psaki, if we have the sound, this was just a few moments ago in the White House briefing room. She was asked to respond to the latest allegations against Cuomo, what the president's saying about it. Here's Psaki.
The president believes that every woman who's come forward, there have now been 6, I believe, who have come forward, deserves to have her voice heard, should be treated with respect, and should be able to tell her story. There also is an independent investigation that is ongoing, of course, in the state with subpoena power overseen by the Attorney General, and he certainly supports that moving forward.
So that was Psaki on Biden, but where are these prominent female leaders? Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, and others.
I don't have an answer to that because to me it's antithetical to what all of these platforms stand for, which is, according to their own words, a dedication to amplifying the voices of other women, of accusers, giving them the space to speak, giving them the opportunity to be heard. This doesn't have to be a rush to judgment in order to have people feel heard. And in fact, again, Jennifer Blakeman, with her recent allegations, she says, in that moment, as I calculated what was happening to me, I made that split-second decision that it was not worth my political career to challenge a powerful man. That so many women just grin and bear it in the moment. They learn to be quiet. They silence themselves because they know quite well what may happen. And quick point about these 2 attorneys that are leading the investigations, you guys. I think it's important for viewers to remember that one of them, June Kim, she was the one that led the investigation that ultimately put in jail both who Cuomo referred to as his economic guru and also his brother. Remember, in those 2 separate investigations into bribery and corruption there in the administration. So they are no stranger to getting results. And with this investigation results that we expect to take about 2 months, there will also be recommendations asserted. It's not just a factual report, but will also be recommendations. And final quick point, if I may, the forcible touching element, the forcible touching law within New York state law, that misdemeanor, that brings with it the potential for a sex offender registration.
Emily, I heard you talking about that on Outnumbered as well. And the last time that you were on with this, as we were discussing Cuomo, we talked about the 2 tracks that are going on here. There's the political track on the one side and the legal track on the other. The political track obviously is putting pressure on the governor to step down or potential impeachment. He is resisting that so far, saying, I'm not going to resign. But speak to us about the legal track. If the allegations of groping at the governor's mansion are true, that could potentially lead to, as you pointed out, some sort of a criminal charge. But we would have to wait for the investigation to be completed before that track can be fully realized, yes?
Right, that there's sort of multiple layers that are going on at the same time. So the forcible touching, the groping that's involving an intimate body part, right? That's a criminal realm. Thus far, we know that there haven't been charges actually filed by Albany. However, that could happen. We also know that there haven't yet also been lawsuits filed. We don't technically have a sexual harassment lawsuit filed by any plaintiff, let alone by the full 7 that we've heard from. And then also, obviously, there's the Attorney General investigation that is operating under New York state law, city law, as well as federal law, right? The Civil Rights Act. And so there are multiple consequences for this, the governor and his administration legally, that can either be in the form of fines, of corrections and implementing corrective behavior, and also on the criminal front.